Hello, welcome to One Moment Wiser. This is Christy Bridges, and I am so excited today because one of the most incredible people I've met is here with us. We are doing a series where you get to meet the authors who have put their own stories into Option Ocean. That's the devotional that's coming out in April for people who are transitioning and trying to find out what direction they should go in the next phase of life. We designed it for those kids that are going to graduate in May, but we've discovered that it's actually for all ages. So Rip Kastaris is one of the most versatile artists I've ever met. He swept me away with his paintings of blues musicians, because you know I like them. But he was also the first Hellenic American to be chosen by the U.S. Olympic Committee to commemorate U.S. athletes in 2002 and then again in 2004. And he has a mural hanging in the Athens Olympic Stadium called, is it Kyklos, Rip?
Kikos.
Kyklos,
Right.
Circle of Glory, that is just gorgeous. My favorite one of his works, he allowed us to use in one of the advertisements for Option Ocean. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to post it after this. It's called Confluence, and you can see that in St. Louis on Broadway. And then Rip turned around and did something completely different. Rip, you spent the last year doing something that is a total contrast, but actually kind of a complement to your other works. What did you spend 2018 doing?
2008 was the painting of 15,000 square feet of iconography in a five-domed cathedral in Parma, Ohio, at St.
Oh,
Joseph's, which was all done in the Byzantine style with the gold leaf and all the biblical stories in the domes.
oh, it's just incredible. I love the videos that you posted as you were building it. Um, just putting things together it was just really, really neat to watch. And you did things I wouldn't have expected. You know, you imagine someone painting at the cathedral, you think of Michelangelo lying on his back on a ladder, you know, with paint dripping in his eyes, and you actually were able to make a lot of the forms ahead of time and then put them up on top of these wide skies that you had painted in different backgrounds. That was kind of cool to watch.
Well, that's interesting that you say Michelangelo, because we were at the same height as the Sistine Chapel, about
Oh,
6 or 8
wow.
feet above the ground. And it's a little daunting looking down from almost 7 stories up when you're working. Um, but I mean, while it's the myth that Michelangelo worked on his back all the time, I think in doing the research myself, they worked by firelight, and they did stand up most of the time while they were doing it. Um, but in recent times, churches are done by working canvases and then working gluing them into the church and then finishing that way. It's a technique that really allows you to put a lot more detail into the work in the studio and then make it look the best once it gets up there.
That's fantastic. You know, I've seen with you, artists who really care just continue to develop new ways of doing things and add their own techniques and styles. And so it's nice to see that we've made that kind of progress and the work is just gorgeous.
I think that we are so lucky to be alive at a time where there are so many new techniques, new materials, new ways to communicate. We live in a very exciting time if you're going to be a creative person.
Very true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here.
You know, since a lot of the people that I know don't know you, I thought that I might ask you a couple of questions too, because you
Okay.
have such a cool gig with everything that you're doing. I think that your mission and um, your process is wonderful, and that what you do to try to help young people, but anybody, try to get to the next step, and do that in a faith-based way is like an awesome, an awesome job to have, an awesome directive to give to yourself. And I'm just wondering how, I know you are a musician, I know you're an author, but how did you how did you get into this passion for education and wisdom traditions?
You know, I think sometimes people can see things in us before we can, because you ask about that, and I always wanted to be a musician. I always wanted to be a performer. But my grandma, when I was a little kid, always said, "You should be a teacher." And I said, "No, that sounds awful." But she was totally right. I love helping people. And, that's behind what I do as a corporate trainer. I love going to work and helping people learn job skills, but it's really behind what I do with One Moment Wiser, because I want to help everybody find those little ways that they can refine their decision making skills, and instead of going way off track with little tiny decisions, they can stay on track and get to a place that they really want to be. And so when I wrote Wisdom Better Than Wishing, my whole idea was I'm going to help people learn wisdom that I've seen work in people's lives, and that God's given us through the centuries. Well, then I started meeting all these wise people who had so much to share that was being missed because maybe they didn't know how to share it effectively, or they didn't have the reach that they could. And so I created the Share Your Wisdom Wisely course to teach them how to write their own devotional books. But then last year, I had this conversation with a girl who is trying to change her entire identity, and she's already wonderful. And I was talking to a friend of mine about the situation, and her daughter's going through the same thing. And I looked back at my life and my friend's life, and I realized identity crisis isn't anything new. Almost everybody goes through this period where they're kind of defining and refining themselves. But now it's gone to these extremes because the people who could be sharing our stories aren't. And so I want to help people like this girl who's launching out into this ocean of options and wondering who she is and where to go. And at the same time, I want to help people who are already wise to share what they know. And I thought, what a great opportunity for connection. And so that's how we ended up, I ended up inviting 11 people, including you, to craft their stories and share perspective that's going to help people launch out into the option ocean, or that sea of possibility.
That's such an awesome idea, and such a great story about connections, and a great story about bringing the best that multiple people have to help even more people. And how did you come about picking the 11 people that you did?
I am just blessed. I get goosebumps just thinking about it, because the people that get the people who said yes, I invited some people that I've known forever, and then I invited some people that God just somehow planted in my life over the last few years. And a couple of each actually came on board. And when I looked at the stories that they had, when I looked at the accomplishments that you guys have, I got a little teary, because it feels incredible to have just something to offer people who already have accomplished so much. And what I looked for at the start was simply people who understood, who weren't too distant from their early experiences, but people who, even when life had gone through some tough turns, they had come out the other side going, wow, God can do anything with whatever we give him. And when we give him everything, then we get surprising results. And so the people who had some good perspective on the fact that, yeah, we all make mistakes, and who also had a good current vibrant life where they didn't let old mistakes hold them back, or old situations keep them stuck. They knew what they could do, and they tuned into God and went for it. And so I'm just I'm still kind of in shock that I get to participate in a group like this. It's really
That,
fun.
Christy, that's true creativity, because to be creative is more than just to know a skill. But I really think it's taking a skill and then connecting people with it. I mean, we live in a time where everything is can't get any faster or bigger. Or, there's just so much of everything's become a commodity in terms of skills. But there's kind of almost a new paradigm of concepts that instead of having a faster car, to design a car that you can have a great experience with your family in. I think that as time goes by, that's what really has the most value is people's work, making them feel like they're not just a number in a big system, but that it connects them to the people that they love and the people that they love them, and their grandparents and their grandchildren. That's what brings it full circle, so that we're not just making more widgets or doing things faster or more or bigger. And so I think what you've done is you've taken some great skills, which you have with your writing and your management and all that, and you've really put it into a package where you could mentor people through individuals that they'd never get to meet if it wasn't for you doing this. So, tip of the cap to that, and like I said, I'm really honored to be part of it.
Well, thank you. You said something there that caught my attention. Um, we could make a book that has 100 bullet points on how to have a successful career, or how to, get the job that pays the most. But what we've learned, those of us who participated in this, we started out with writing letters to our younger selves so that we could tune in to what we really needed to hear back then. And it helped us identify the fact that we didn't want to just teach someone how to be successful, make lots of money, build a career. We wanted to teach people how to have lives they actually enjoyed. And you talked about that in your chapter. Actually, you ended up with a couple of chapters, but you talked about that in your story when you said, you were a graphic designer because that's where the jobs were. And one day your boss said, "What do you really want to do?" You said, "I want to illustrate." And he said, "Fine, go do that." And it may not have felt very comfortable at the time, but it opened your space, it opened your opportunities, and you unfolded your wings and went with it. And it's turned out beautifully. And that's what we wanted to give to the kids, to the readers that we have in this book.
That idea of things that seem to be problems that can be kind of triggers or springboards to change, and the ability as individuals to choose to make them that rather than to allow them to be something that drags us down, I think is something that you develop over time, and develop if you have kind of a faith-based attitude about things, where you say, whatever happens to me, it must be a blessing if I see it from the right point of view. And you can turn things around, and you really find out that the things that have challenged you the most are the things that have sculpted you into the person that you are. Like, if I didn't have a million problems with the artwork that we did to go to the Olympics, starting here in St. Louis and finally winding up in the Olympic Stadium in Athens, like, it was a thousand no's that led to one yes, but that job formed my ability to speak to committees and Olympic committees and politicians, and all the skills you need to communicate with those people and share a vision and get a lot of people on board to make contributions. All that happened not because of the easy way, but because of the difficulties that you got along the way.
And we don't always know what abilities we're going to need. God gives us a gift, like with you painting, and we start using that gift. And along the way, he uses opportunities like that to kind of hone our other skills so that we can level up. And I love that. If we can see that, well, God's going to use everything I go through, and I'm eternal. So, things aren't over just because something goes wrong. He's going to keep using stuff. And if we just trust that process and continue doing what we can do, then you end up, being seen all over the world. And I think that's awesome. I love that you have that perspective. I think that is probably the key difference between people who actually enjoy their lives and are good to be around and are successful, and the people who are stuck and resentful and depressed and don't seem to ever get to do what they want to do. Everything stops them from progressing.
I think that that when we just continue to move forward, even if we've been discouraged, and not judge it so much, that things work out. The only thing that stops people or makes them fail is they moving their hands up into the air and saying, I can't do it anymore. I often tell myself, don't think about it. Just keep your hands moving and everything will work out. But I think that there has to be a willingness to just really work hard, which I could see you doing during the process of this book here so much. It's like, oh, I was so exhausted when we came back from Ohio from that big trip. And, we were trying to put the stories together. But boy, you really came in all the time with your homework done and everything. And I don't think that you can get there unless you have faith and have the go power to just keep moving, and it all works out. But that's kind of a key ingredient. That when people tell me that they can't draw a face, I always say, okay, I want you to show me your 101st drawing of a face, and then together we'll decide whether you can draw a face or not. But doing the legwork, working without witnesses, and doing your job um, without emotion, without. I mean, all we see on television is either the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. But most of life is neither the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. Most of life is coming in the morning and setting your work up and then starting to do it and getting lost in it, not getting lost, but having an immersive experience where things can happen which you didn't even really know about or plan. The greatest things in art are when you begin a process and you allow some of that to happen, and the best paintings come out when you're not a dictator on which way it's going to go.
That makes a lot of sense. The videos that you've shared have shown me a little behind the scenes of what goes into planning this gigantic work. You start by sketching things out and then painting a small version of it, and then it gets upwards from there. It gets scaled up, but you still find that inspiration. It's not all planning and formatting. For you find the time to go out and listen to music and just draw with the flow, or to get alone with the spirit and just go with the flow. And it's neat when an artist or any kind of creative person can have both of those things working. Sometimes we think that it's all about self-expression. I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna express myself. And we might resist someone who tries to help us learn structure or additional skills. And that we shouldn't resist that. We should accept that as a blessing. If someone wants to help us develop, then they must see that we're doing something that could grow.
In art, we say you have to know the rules before you start to break them. You have to have done all the preliminary design, structure, drawing. There was just so much of that when I was a young person. And you can find your voice, but abstraction really needs to develop out of reality if it's going to be the best, or it has no form whatsoever. Um, but if I was going to make, a suggestion
Hmm.
to young people in the creative process, um, I think finding some silence in your life is definitely a part of it,
Yeah.
because there are so many people, institutions, everything is calling us to do this and to do that all the time. There's a million voices in our heads. When you turn on the tube, there's just everybody's saying this is how you should be or this is what you should be. And regardless of what you're going to do in your life, the creative process really starts with having some silence in your life and having some moments in your day and through your week where you can become still and start to find a sanctuary of time that you have for yourself that nobody else can intrude on. It's an hour where things can can begin to develop, where you can be listening to what comes from the inside rather than comes from the outside of your life and of the environment that you're in. From then, you know, part of being an artist is always not just drawing, but you have to be both a listener and an observer of things. And so we need to give ourselves enough time to do that without the stress of having to do this or to do that. But if we want to develop our own voice, it has to have that. And then, um, when we start to do anything, we copy. That's the first thing that artists do. That's the first thing that musicians do. They cover a song by somebody else. They do that, and that's how we learn. But when you when you continue to do that faithfully and learn your skills, um, you'll start to develop a body of work. So here you were, and you didn't know which way to go, but from that still process, and then be being a good observer without expecting to get anything from the flowers that you're looking at or the tunes that you're listening to. From really observing those things, you start to see or feel the nuances there, and then you start to copy what other people have done, or you start to look at life and copy it, and over time, a body of work comes. And I think that we find our creative personality not in what we had planned, but in what we see developing through us over a period of time when all that work goes on. It's there's so much of a surprise that happens in what I call our inward out experience, that when we become still and there is a sense of working with a faithfulness about what we do, that that if we just keep our hands moving, that without judgment and with faith that it will work out, um, great things can happen. And they have in my life. And I think that there's a tendency for most people to give up on themselves just a little too fast.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because you just described the artistic development process, but it's also really parallels our spiritual development process, our life wisdom. We start out by looking at the wisdom that we have been given from, centuries of people passing it down. And then we copy that until we start to understand why we're doing it. And start to, we have that quiet time, that alone time where we discover ourselves, we experience the presence of God, and then we start to express ourselves, and we continue to go back to the wise teachings that we've been given, because we want to stay in alignment. We can get way off track, but at the same time, life becomes more and more, the more that wisdom becomes internalized, the more those shapes and techniques are internalized, like it with art, then the more our own expression flows into something really beautiful, and we end up with a life that's like the lives of the people that I chose for Option Ocean, something that's just a work of art.
I think that our spiritual life and our and the creative process are very similar, and that sense of I don't know. I mean, like art, the process of creativity is somewhat a prayerful kind of an experience, and it's one where we come to a place where we can hear the still, quiet voice within us, and while we can do all kinds of things because we don't believe in what the wisdom of time, you know, and scripture can show us. We often find ourselves coming back to it when we see that the labyrinth, I say, is well known. There are people who have
Yeah.
gone through it so many times, and so we know that we have to respect the experience of all the people over time, since the beginning of time, that have been humans just like us, and that um, when we follow the spiritual truths that have been revealed, that we really won't have to go through as many painful ones, even though life will be difficult. I think there's a sense that when you do tap into that, you feel like you're on the right road, and that you can be empowered a great deal by knowing what heroes have done in the past.
It's so true. And you can be encouraged. Any type of creative expression is going to have its moments where you're just like, everything sucks. I give up, and you don't give up because
Like
you
daily, that
have,
happens, right?
right? There's always a point, and it's funny. I thought it was just me until I've listened to other authors, big authors, talk about having the same experience somewhere in the process of creating every book. And I know this feeling because you get to the point where you've been excited about it, it's been wonderful, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, nobody's going to like this anyway, why am I doing it? And it's just silly, and it's just human perception. But those are the times when faith is such a support for me, because my Bible tells me I can do all things through Christ. It says nothing can separate me from the love of God. So, everything else I can deal with. And it says God's going to fulfill his purpose for me. So if I just keep showing up, he does the work. I just get to play with the gifts he's given me. And that right there is enough to lift my head up and get my butt moving again, and meet the commitments that I've made to myself and to other people I'm working with.
I think that's such a cool way to look at it. And it kind of repeats what I said about let's keep our hands moving and our mind still, in having faith that God will take care of the difficult part. We have to seed things, but we're not going to like pull plants out of the ground. We need to be faithful, a daily experience of doing your work, and 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 relaxing and not judging everything. There's just such a great value in being busy without being judgmental. Just being full of wonder, and just being like a kid when you saw something, you said, "Wow." Well, when you respond to that, other people are going to respond to that as well. We're all the same in so many ways. And so when you see something that's beautiful and you go, wow, and then you find a way that you can both understand that and somehow frame that and show it to other people, you get the same response from them. And there's just a way that we all, I don't know, I'm always surprised at how when I see something that's beautiful, other people just say that's really cool, and they think that I did it, but I really don't think so. I just think that I just really enjoyed it, and I don't know, lived it and made, God creates, man copies, something like that.
That's awesome, though, because Rip, we live in a society where everything is made fun of and everything is scorned. And people, we start out being curious and in awe of the world. But somewhere in middle school, we're told, oh, that's not cool. And we have to change and start going, oh, yeah, everything's boring. And I think some people carry that into adulthood, and it's just pathetic. And when we have an artist who continues to look at the world with wonder, who continues to say, yes, this is beautiful, and I'm going to share it with people, then people feel the permission that they need to go, that is so cool. I love that. People feel the permission again to return to the childhood ways of being curious and being inspired. So that's a gift. That's a gift that we bring to people. Thank you for that.
Funny story that when I was in high school and I was given a scholarship to go to Washington University in St. Louis, my guidance counselor took me aside and said, "Rip, you should really look into like auto body mechanics or something like that. They don't
Oh
take
my God.
they don't take people like you at Washington University." And I was that made me so mad. That I just worked even harder, and I wound up being the valedictorian of the art school because I was like committed to like. Sometimes when people put me down or whatever, it gave me even more esteem. However, it also set me back a lot too, and I had to work through that. But it reveals the importance of how, like, we all need to encourage each other. A word of encouragement can change somebody's day and change somebody's life. And then at the same time, you know, seeing somebody put another person down can really ruin that person's day. And so, it's just a powerful thing. And I hope that, and I know that the work that you do aims to inspire people, and can only be done because of your own hard work. But that's the way that I feel too. I mean, ultimately, learning skills, having a body of work, demonstrating that we can do things really becomes mastery when it serves other people.
Yeah.
And show me somebody that does great service to other people, and I'll show you a successful person on every level, financially, emotionally, in relationships and all that. You see people who can do a great service for others, and they're an inspiration. And those are the people that we need to follow after as mentors, regardless of what age we are.
Yes. And I've had to learn some things about giving service to people and what helps people and what hurts people in me, because I've found myself in relationships where I've tried to lift people who wanted to sit still, until people decide to move. Then you can't drag them uphill. You end up sliding down with them and, neglecting yourself. But when you start with a God connection and you see how God does it, he isn't codependent. But when we are ready for his help, we become stronger. And he's right there going, here, let me show you. And when we do that with other people, we give service at the time where people are ready and in the way where people feel respected and encouraged. Then you're right. There's nothing that stops that. People respond to it, and our lives are better all around. Rip, you have been such a pleasure. I could talk to you all day long, but I think we have reached our time. So did you have anything else you wanted to say before we go? How do people get a hold of you? Where do they find your art? I know we've got your Facebook page, and there's some gorgeous stuff on there. But what's the best way to
I
contact
think
you?
actually I've had a lot of content online, and I could, but Facebook is just such an easy way to get a hold of me, and
It really
and just
is.
a great way to see. It's like I've been looking back at the last 5 years, and I make art just about every day. I just post new images all the time and new videos all the time and stuff, and it's kind of become a diary for me. If all my hard drives go down, I'll just be able to get all my files off of Facebook, and I won't be lost. But
I love it.
I appreciate that, and it's been really, really cool knowing you and seeing how hard you work, and I love the mission that you have, and glad to be part of it.
Well, fantastic. And if you want to, you who are listening, if you want to pre-order a copy of Option Ocean, whether you know a teenager who's going to be graduating in May, or if you are in the middle of a time of life yourself where you're leaving the past behind and going, okay, which way do I go now? Then go ahead and pre-order your copy. And if you pre-order your copy before the book comes out, then you'll actually get a letter written by one of our authors. So I'm going to post a link here for you to get that pre-order done. And please share this with your friends and take a look at Rip's art. It really is amazing. Thank you so much, Rip. You have a wonderful day. We're going to say goodbye now. Let me end that. And we'll see you next time at One Moment Wiser.
Bye-bye.